Well, another regional championship weekend has passed up once again, and this time around we have a brand new deck that seemingly kind of came out of nowhere. This is one of those decks where, like, if you knew, you knew, and if you didn't, then it's just kind of caught you off guard. And I'm not gonna lie, it definitely caught me off guard. You know, I saw all the tweets leading up to the event with Tord in the secret deck. I did see some images online, you know, that involved Kangaskhan and Absol, but I did not expect this deck to have such a showing over the weekend. At both of the regionals that occurred too. It wasn't just Milwaukee, it was the other one in Brazil as well. This deck just kind of dominated. Look at the day 2 meta share right here for Milwaukee, and you do see Mega Absol box right down here in the top 10. It's where is that? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th pretty much, right? So about 6% of the meta in day 2. Really, there's no deck above 10%, so pretty much has a really good share of the meta, and a lot of people are playing this deck. And when you look at the other regional, you'll notice that it's actually the highest played deck in day 2. So overall, really good showing. Did very well at both events. Obviously made top 4 in Milwaukee. I believe there was 3 in top 8 total, including Tord, who kind of piloted this deck and kind of designed it for the most part, from my understanding. So it's really interesting to see how pretty much overnight a new deck can just kind of change the entire meta. It's a deck you have to account for now. The deck that you have to basically understand how to beat, and it's a deck that kind of keeps certain other decks in control, which will kind of lead to some other decks doing better, which I'll talk about. And looking at the matchup data here from Milwaukee, you will pretty much see that overall across the board it has some really solid matchups. So over here on the right is going to be the win percentages. You see that a lot of these matchups are pretty favorable. The only one that's really not favorable at all is Ceruledge, which is still winnable. You just have to have some things kind of like go in your favor. So it's definitely a tougher matchup for sure. And obviously a big part of this is that people just didn't know about this deck. They didn't know how to play against it. They didn't have to practice against the deck, so naturally you're gonna squeak out some more wins. Now that the deck is out there, I'm sure all these percentages are going to go down. But overall, still a very solid deck, and I definitely see it being a big part of the meta moving forward. The other matchups that are a little bit tricky are going to be Raging Bolt, and then also like Joltik, Goldango. I can see how that's kind of tough as well. Some of these bigger hitting decks can be kind of tough at times. With Joltik, Goldango, you have multiple attackers, some that have abilities, some that don't, so you can't always rely on the Rock Ogerpon. So definitely a little bit of a tricky matchup there as well. But what's nice is you have a very favorable Gardevoir matchup, which will also help out some other decks. And when you kind of think about events and how things have been going, Gardevoir's kind of been dominating across the board. Doesn't really have any terrible matchups. Obviously, Zoroark is not great. Things like Grimmsnarl could be tricky as well, but nothing that really shuts down Gardevoir. And I wouldn't say this deck shuts down Gardevoir, but if it is favorable, naturally, it's going to beat Gardevoir a little bit more than it loses to it. And that's going to help out some other decks, specifically decks like Crustle, for example, which we kind of saw at this tournament as well. A lot of people were playing this Absol box kind of deck, and we managed to see a Crustle finish in 19th place. I haven't seen very many people talk about this, but top 32 Crustle, very, very impressive. And when you look at their matchups here, lost to Gardevoir, lost to a Dragapult Charizard, but yeah, only ran into one Gardevoir, which is really nice. With a deck like Crustle, you look at the Crustle matchups, for example, you'll see that it pretty much kind of beats most things, except for Gardevoir. That's like the rough matchup there, right? So I think I was looking at it earlier. Yeah, against straight Gardevoir, the win percentage is like 60%, which is awful. Dragapult, Dusknoir, a little bit tricky as well, 41%, but still pretty winnable. Everything else here across the board is pretty much favorable. Like, it's kind of insane. So I do think, you know, if a deck like Absol gets more popular and Gardevoir kind of goes down a little bit, it will naturally kind of benefit other decks like Crustle, which kind of just get destroyed by Gardevoir. And overall, Crustle had a really strong showing. One in top 32, another one in 65th place, a few more in like top 256. So really, really solid run from Crustle as well. Big part of that is kind of, you know, Gardevoir not taking up as much of the meta, and I do think that as this deck gets more popular, again, it will help decks like Crustle out a little bit more. I'm really interested to see though on how this deck kind of evolves. We saw a few different builds. This right here is the top 4 list, which also included a Budew. It has the 4 bosses and the 4 pennies, which is really nice. Definitely a supporter that you really kind of need a lot of times. They kind of cut down on the Pokégears here just because you're kind of naturally drawing into supporters, more so than having to find certain supporters. So kind of, you know, riskier as far as finding that turn 1 Arven for Trolley, but at the same time, you're able to just find supporters naturally, which is nice. And yeah, now that the sauce is out there, again, it's going to be very interesting to see what we kind of see with other decks here. So, for example, we'd run the Cornerstone Ogerpon for things like Goldango, for things like Charizard. You have to kind of imagine that those decks are going to start including counters to this. You just have to kind of have an answer to it, right? Like before, Cornerstone was one of those cards where, you know, you can kind of randomly throw it into a deck. Not really like a foolproof strategy, right? But when you have a whole deck like this that's kind of specifically designed to set up that Cornerstone for those matchups, you got to have an answer. So I do think that moving forward, we are going to see more kind of tech cards or more cards just to kind of deal with some of these cards that we find in this deck. Another one that I think moving forward we're going to kind of see a little bit more often is going to be Enhanced Hammer. I definitely think that it's a great card for this specifically because you do run the Arven, so you can naturally search it out. And whenever you run into the mirror match, a lot of times they like to attach Mist Energy onto the Absol and prevent that attack, which will instantly knock it out. So running the Enhanced Hammer will kind of help deal with Mist Energy. It can be useful for other matchups as well. Going up against Dragapult, for example, you can get rid of Neo Upper Energy. So overall, I think Enhanced Hammer is going to be a card that moving forward, we're going to see in a lot of decks. I also expect to see more Klefki as well. We kind of saw that play out on stream where, you know, Charizard starting to run the Klefki a little bit to shut down things like Psyduck, be able to pop those Dusknors and those Dusclops. If there's two cards on the rise right now that I expect to see in decks a little bit more, it's going to be Klefki and then also the Enhanced Hammer. And of course, I do expect to start seeing some more Cornerstone, you know, technology to kind of deal with it there. I also would expect to see like some more switching options or more decks run Turo. Maybe Gardevoir will start running Turo as well again. I do think a big part of winning that matchup is the fact that most decks don't play Turo. So I would imagine that we're going to start to see that a little bit more. Again, this is a deck that you definitely have to plan for now, right? I do expect, you know, the matchups to go down, right? Like the winning matchups and stuff like that, just because this was a brand new deck, so people were not prepared for it. So I'm pretty sure at Vegas, more people will be prepared for this, but at the same time, we're going to see probably a big shift on how this deck is played and how it's built. This is the early stages. We've seen this with a lot of decks where over time they just kind of change a little bit. So again, I'm very interested to see on how the list changes. I myself, I am going to the Vegas regionals, and not gonna lie, this is a deck that I am considering. I'm mostly a Dragapult player, but the deck hasn't felt great lately. Maybe with this deck it might help a little bit more, as far as like Gardevoir hopefully going down a little bit, but I'm not really too locked in on the deck just yet, and I have been playing a lot of this Kangaskhan build here, and again, it's a lot of fun. Like, not gonna lie, like as a Dragapult player, running into this deck sounds kind of like a nightmare. Like, I feel like you don't have a lot of great options to deal with it, especially if they start to run Enhanced Hammer. It makes that matchup even more difficult. So I definitely got to get back to the drawing board here, because I really think that this deck is kind of insane. Yeah, you just have the ability to do so much with it. You know, you have multiple win conditions, which is really nice. You can retreat lock with Yveltal. You can, you know, throw out a Cornerstone in certain matchups and just win off of that. You can, you know, play to Kangaskhan and go for the coin flips. You can play to Absol, go for Claw of Darkness and start stealing cards. Or just start doing big knockouts with the Munkidori. So you have so many ways to play this deck. You got the late game attacker with Pecharunt too, which is really nice. And of course the Psyduck as well. It's kind of crazy because I decided to buy Psyduck. I finally caved in and spent the $10 to buy it like on Friday. And then the day after the regional, the price shot up like to $20. So yeah, it just keeps going up. It's at $19 right now. You'll see the drastic increase right here after the regional event. So definitely, if you haven't gotten your Psyducks, I highly recommend. You know, typically I like to wait with cards because they just kind of naturally go down. With a card like this, it's not really going to get reprinted, I don't think, because you can only get it like as a promo card. So it's just going to be kind of a matter of, do you need it for Dragapult or not? You know, if it becomes irrelevant, then I'm sure it'll go down a lot. But as of right now, if you need Psyduck, it's probably just going to continue to go up. So probably just go ahead and grab it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to ramble on, kind of give my thoughts on the deck, and kind of give my opinions on it. Again, I'm excited. I'm testing it out. I'm highly considering it for Vegas, so we'll see if I end up playing it or not. But I'll be sure to keep you guys updated. But I'm curious to see all your guys' thoughts. If this is a deck that you kind of knew about going into the regional, or if it kind of caught you off guard like myself. Again, it was, you know, kind of the secret deck, but not so secret because so many people played it. So I do think moving forward, we're going to see some changes here on how a lot of lists are played, not just this deck, but with other decks as well, because now they have to account for this too. Yeah, it's gonna be it for this one, kind of a short one. Yeah, hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for watching.